What's one of the best roles you've ever had and why?
I've been lucky enough to perform lots of different roles. Probably the one that I've most enjoyed was being schools minister, which was a long time ago now. I did that role from 2006 to 2009. It was engrossing. I hadn't got much of a background in education policy before. I had been a school governor, but really very little. But to try and grapple with how do you best set up young people for success through schooling is a challenge that still sustains me. It's most of what I think about every day, and to be completely immersed in that, to be given responsibility for the schools in England, for the teachers who work in those schools, for the buildings and how we invest in them, the technology that might be used to support learning, what the curriculum is that people are learning in schools. In the end, I haven't been able to do anything else that's had as much impact. I'm not saying I made perfect decisions by any means, and many of the decisions that I made were subsequently undone by subsequent ministers. But that's the one I think I enjoyed the most.
What's one decision you've made that helped align your work with your own values?
Aligning work with values is really important and really hard. You know, I've just said, the job where I felt I had the most impact was schools minister, but that period of my life, 5 years when I was a government minister, um, all of my political sort of moral values were there, but it had a massive impact on my family because I was essentially absent for 5 years. And in many ways, it probably cost me my marriage. And so what I've been able to do subsequently in trying to align values and impact and all of those things uh, includes being able to align the right work-life balance and being able to give more time personally as well as professionally. I now have this ridiculous portfolio of lots of different things that I do. I chair 4 boards. I've got another 4 or 5 clients that I do the occasional bit of work for. I am busy here in the House of Lords. I'm a member of a select committee here, as well as following education technology policy and trying to influence policy in that way. I have some honorary roles. I've just been appointed president of Young Citizens, for example. And all of that is trying to influence things. So I'm still very busy, but I'm always trying to preserve Sundays. I'm always, I'm lucky enough to have a place that I can retreat to recharge. And that does go to values. It does go to saying, ultimately, what I'm about in my education work is we need to nurture in young people the ability to care for themselves, to care for others, and to care for the natural environment for present and future generations. And so my values include caring for myself, because only when I'm caring for myself can I properly care for others and care for the environment too. So I feel like I'm in a good place right now.
What's the biggest thing you've done to create or improve social impact?
My first career was in theatre, and a lot of the theatre that I was involved in and was promoting or taking part in was about change, social commentary, trying to drive impact through shining a light on issues. And in the end, I left theatre for politics because I felt I needed to do something that had a more direct impact. And just being a councillor, just being a member of parliament, being an advocate for people, representing people, the casework of improving individuals' lives by essentially using the 2 letters after your name, MP, so that people will listen. That had a lot of power. I talked about being a minister and the top-down power, but I now chair 4 boards, and governance can give you great impact. I chair a Multi-Academy Trustee Act with 38 schools around the country, educating 25,000 young people. that's getting involved in the day-to-day running of schools in a way that obviously has significant social impact. Just as another example. So I think people can have impact in lots of different ways, through voluntary work, through their professional work, through top down, through bottom up, and we should celebrate all of those. And in the end, it goes back to your previous question about how do they align with my values. And I think more than ever now, we need to be empathetic, to care for other people, and to want to drive change collectively together rather than be divided and be sort of individualistic. And that's what my values are all about. And across all of those roles, I've been able to do things in different ways, but still with impact, I think.
Can you share some key milestones or proudest moments in your career?
My career has been full of milestones. I'm very lucky. So I formed a theatre company when I was a student at Cambridge, having been in the West End when I was 13. Those are really significant events. One taught me social mix. I had been educated privately, and suddenly I was in a gang of boys performing, but boys from all over London, from all sorts of backgrounds. The forming a theatre company was about teaching me to take some risk in order to carve out what I wanted for myself. Being elected as a member of Parliament in 2001 felt like an extraordinary thing, and walking into the House of Commons chamber and taking my seat for the first time, that was another milestone. Similar, being made a minister, speaking from the dispatch box for the first time, becoming a member of the House of Lords, so being given the privilege of being a parliamentarian for life. When I worked at TES, a company that used to be known as the Times Education Supplement, and founding TES Institute, which is now the fifth largest qualifier of teachers in the country. That was another milestone. So I've had a few. I suppose milestones, you're allowed to have a few on a journey, aren't you? So, and then, I'd also say I've got two wonderful children through my first marriage. So getting married, having two kids, getting remarried, gaining a daughter through that marriage. Those are also really important milestones that in the end define my life more and more so than all of those professional ones do, because in the end that's what's rooted, and that's what endures regardless of all the other things that go on.
What's one project or piece of work that taught you a big lesson about impact, and what did you take from it?
I'll talk about something else in terms of a lesson about impact, which is something I'm really proud to be associated with. There's actually the creation and brainchild of my wife Claudia's, but I support her as much as I can in a community called OPI. OPI is a Finnish word that kind of doesn't have much of a translation into English, but it's something to do with wisdom and education and learning. And she curates a community of global education change makers, I suppose, is a fairly ridiculous phrase to describe it. And she does that by creating really beautiful gatherings for 2 or 3 days that are designed in order to build trust amongst a gathering of 50, 60, 70 people, so that then as a community we support each other between those events. And it's the most lively WhatsApp group on my phone, while we're all supporting each other every day with different things in our working lives and in our personal lives too. And that idea that you can have impact through bringing people together, designing not conferences of keynotes and thought leaders doing thought leadership, but of them learning together, playing together, and learning to trust each other so that then you can magnify each individual's impact by the love and the affection that we have for each other, creating essentially a very large family that means that we can magnify all of our impact in a really exciting way. And the work that the OPI community does around the world is inspirational every day.
What's a piece of strategic advice you found yourself giving more than once?
It's a bit like anyone who listens to Radio 4 on a Saturday morning might have come across the concept of inheritance tracks. So what's the piece of strategic advice I inherited for somebody else that I pass on to other people? And I inherited this advice from the wonderful Frank Dobson, who was a Labour politician, who's an MP in the same constituency now represented by Keir Starmer. And Frank was Health Secretary in Tony Blair's first cabinet. And when I got elected in 2001, Frank was on the backbenches, but he had a chat with me in the House of Commons tea room very early on, and said the one piece of advice I would give you is when you're asked to do something, don't agree to do it unless you would agree to do it if it was tomorrow. It's a really important piece of time management that I pass on to other people. That it's easy to say yes. I'm really guilty of saying yes to all sorts of things, and I have to keep reminding myself, if this was tomorrow that I'm being asked to do this thing, would I agree to do it? Do I really need to do it? Is it important enough that I would make the time to do it tomorrow? And it's a really good way of checking in on whether or not you should say yes to something that's so far in the future that it feels, yeah, that'll be fine. It's so far away, I don't really need to worry about it. Because at some point, that event will turn up in your diary and you'll go, oh, why did I agree to do that? Got to manage your time.
What's one learning from delivering work at scale you think others should know?
Your success is defined by essentially the team you've got around you. It's easy to appoint people that you like, that are probably a bit like you, and then you don't have diversity in your team. Everyone agrees with you, and then you miss something. I'm not a detail person, so I need to ensure that I've got in my team someone really good operationally who understands what we want to achieve. That's my leadership role, to have the vision, to broadly set out what the strategy is, but I need someone tactical alongside me who can drill into the details and ensure that each one of those stages and milestones of what we're trying to achieve at scale is going to work. You've got to have good governance, so by which I mean you've got to have people who are not involved operationally, but who you're transparent with, who can see what's going on and will ask you the right challenging questions. Normally where there's failure at things at scale, it's because of bad governance or an absence of governance, where you haven't got those independent people who are looking and going, well, have you thought about this? Are you sure you're doing that? Why are you doing that? What's the outcome on that other thing? Why was the outcome the way it was? Why didn't we do better on that? And if you've got those in place, you've got diversity of decision making, you're appointing to your weaknesses and not to your strengths, you've got good governance, then I think you can succeed at scale.
Who or what inspires your approach to creating impact through your work?
I mean, obviously, here in the House of Lords, I'm a bit of a recovering politician, but I'm still, in the end, politics sort of runs through me. And so political figures can be really inspirational. I remain inspired by Clem Attlee. So Clem Attlee was the British Prime Minister elected at the end of the Second World War. His government created the National Health Service, created the welfare state, implemented the Beveridge Report to create essentially the new post-war society and the post-war model that we've had ever since. It's not to say it doesn't need some refreshing. Under his government, we built Heathrow, we built crossings across London, we created the green belt. They achieved so much, and they achieved so much so quickly in what, a 6 or 7 year time in government. So that idea that government can positively change people's lives, create enduring change, is best embodied in the Claire Attlee government. And incidentally, Claire Attlee wouldn't get elected today. It just wasn't charismatic enough. He was quite a boring person, quite managerial in some ways, but he had a plan, and with his team of ministers, they delivered the plan, I think, really well. And then obviously there are other inspirational political figures, the likes of Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. I'm lucky enough to spend a bit of time with Julia Gillard, the former Prime Minister of Australia, who shown such bravery in countering misogyny, for example, in her political culture. So those political figures and how they can create impact, and I still believe in politics as the vehicle for change. And I was lucky enough to work with Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, very different characters, but both inspirational in their own way. And then, look, I think that there are plenty of others outside of the world of politics that can be inspirational. Figures like Malala, Greta Thunberg. Whilst I don't necessarily always agree with Greta as an example and the way she goes about some things, the inspiration of a young person deciding to stand up for what she believed in and make a difference is inspirational, as young people are inspirational to me every day. And I meet young people most days and talk to them about their challenges and their leadership. And in the end, with all of my education work, those are the most inspirational figures, I guess.
What is the thing that brings you the most work joy?
Work joy, in the end, is mostly it's delivered when I spend time with young people and see the impact that we're having in improving their education, which isn't about being there in August when they get their exam grades. I don't define success in education really through exam grades. They're important, don't get me wrong, but it's more about every year, as an example, in the EAC Multi-Academy Trust that I chair the board for, we have a celebration day in Birmingham, and where young people come and show off their party piece, be it dancing, singing, stand-up comedy, magic, whatever it is that is their thing. And seeing young people with confidence, with joy, showing what they can do is just gorgeous. It's full of joy, full of love. And obviously, as yesterday I hosted an event for young people here in the House of Lords, and again, meeting some of them with quite a lot of struggle, but they'd had a great day developing their voice, developing their leadership, developing their communication skills, and to see the impact of that was fabulous. And then the final thing that brings me joy in work actually is the OPI community that I mentioned earlier on, when we get together, as we do informally periodically, and then we're getting together more formally in November. That's just a joyful experience. People who hear about it think it's just one long party. It's not quite that. We do some work together, we do some thinking together, we do some personal development together, but there is a huge amount of joy and love in the room, which is great.
What's your favourite quote that you'd like us to include, and why?
So one of my favourite quotes comes from that extremely quotable, extraordinary, articulate leader, Martin Luther King. And Dr. King said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. But education which stops with efficiency may prove the greatest menace to society. The most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason, but with no morals. And what that speaks to, obviously, is my passion for education. And that education is as much about teaching values and morality as it is teaching knowledge. And that's embodied in what Martin Luther King stood for.